John, so good to see you. We start with a really important question. When should you start taking money out of your 401k? A 401k, one of the most powerful retirement savings tools available. But if you take the money out too early, you could face penalties, wait too long, and RMDs could push you into a higher tax bracket. So let's start with the basics. For the most part, employees tend to save in a tax deferred 401k. Why is that important?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is, we've been programmed, right? The 401k is the largest retirement vehicle, for the general population of this country. So that's what we were told to do, right? Save for retirement. A lot of people don't have pensions anymore. So
Right.
sock away that money. Number two, they get that instant gratification of the tax deduction, right? If you're making $100,000 a year and you put $10,000 into your 401k, well, now you're only going to pay tax on the $90,000 of income, and the $10,000 is deferred. That's a key thing because now you've entered the IRS into a business partnership on your investment. So, that's why the 401k has gotten so big, because essentially that's, for the better half of the last 30 years, that's where we've been told to stockpile our money for our future retirement.
Mm-hmm. All right, now let's talk about taking the money out before you're actually allowed. So before age 59 and a half, what do you give up if you take a distribution from your 401k before you're eligible?
You know what? You said an interesting comment. If you're allowed, isn't that crazy? This is your
Yeah,
money,
true. Right.
but the government has put some, very, very tight
Rules.
constraints. Why? Again, because you're their business partner now in this investment. So let me get to this answer. If you take the money out before you're 59 and a half out of your 401k, you are subject to a 10% penalty plus the income tax. So as you see there, you're taking out $1, you're getting 60% now, or 60 cents of that dollar. Now, this really becomes an issue for early retirees, and there's two things that become problematic. Number one is, for most people, they want to roll their money out from a 401k to an IRA. Now that 59 and a half is etched in stone, unless you do some very complex things like a 72T. I'm not even going to get into that, and I try to avoid that for my clients. But here's another thing where you can actually access the money before 59 and a half from your 401k. And that is if you retire at age 55. You cannot retire before age 55. If you retire at age 55 and you access the money after your age 55 and a half, you are not subject to that 10% penalty. It's very important to understand, because I have a lot of clients who, are first responders, and they may retire at 55, 56 years old, and they want to roll that money into an IRA, but we need to keep some of that money in their 401k or their 457Bs so they have access to it. The last thing you want to do is retire and have access to it, or tip the government 10% on a penalty, because I
That's
hate
true.
tipping the
Yeah,
IRS.
me too. All right. On the other hand, when you reach 59 and a half, how are those withdrawals taxed, and how can those distributions affect your tax bracket?
Yeah, so no matter where this money is, 401k, IRA, 457B, 401A, 401H, the money's taxed as ordinary income. So think of it this way. It's taxed at the same marginal tax brackets that you had when you're working. So for a lot of people, if you don't have a pension, your tax brackets really come down to how much you're spending in retirement. And Aaron, we've talked about this in a lot of videos. As an advisor, I don't want my clients living a lesser life. And I don't think anyone watching this video goes, I just worked 30, 40 years for this day, and now I'm going to have a lesser lifestyle because
Right.
I'm no longer working, right? This is now the time to enjoy life. You might be able to do the things, travel, do the things you've never been able to do because you were too busy working. So what you need to be cognizant of is that, if you need $100,000 in expenses a year to live off of, you may very well have to take out $130,000. That's a very hypothetical number. It's not an exact tax number, but you may have to take out $130,000 or more to cover the taxes, because your tax bracket, on the expenses, if you need $100,000, that's going to put you in a general bracket, state, federal. And so you have to be well aware of how that's going to play into your withdrawal or distribution strategy along with the taxes. And then on top of that, once you're 63, you now have to start considering Medicare taxes or Medicare premiums. And John, well, you're wrong. It's not 63. You don't claim Medicare till 65. Your Medicare premiums or Medicare taxes are on a 2-year look back.
Right.
So, you want to be cognizant of your modified
Yes.
adjusted gross income starting at 63 and going forward, because that could impact your Medicare. And remember, if you go over Medicare by $1 into the next category,
Right.
you could be adding thousands of dollars of premiums onto you and your spouse's Medicare.
Right, known as the cliff. At some point, though, the government requires you to take those withdrawals. Those are known as RMDs. What are they and when do we pay them?
Man, you're making these 401ks and these tax deferred accounts sound so good. Allowed, required. Yes, so the required minimum distribution. Now the government says, hey, listen, we want our money. And let me just clear the air, Aaron. This only becomes an issue if you don't take out a certain amount of money. So the RMD, real quick, is calculated on all your tax deferred accounts, the balances as of December 31st, and then you have a certain amount of money you have to take out. So if you can put that chart that you just had back up, it's dependent on your age. So for a lot of people, if you're watching this, you may have had to take out at 70 and a half. Now most people are taking out 72 and now 73, with 75 being the future. So let's just use 73 as the example. At 73, you have $1 million and you roughly have about a 4% RMD. That's a rough estimate. Don't etch that in stone, but you're going to be required to take out $40,000 in distributions. Now, if you are already taking out these distributions, that's not an issue. The issue therein lies when people have pensions, or they really don't have a lot of expenses, or they're trying to control their taxes and they're taking out of their capital gains friendlier taxable accounts. Well, if you don't need to take out all that $40,000, the government says, well, hold on here. You are required to take out $40,000. And if you don't take out this entire $40,000, we are going to hit you with a 25% excise penalty, which you are now going to pay tax on also. So the goal of everybody is to do proper tax management to try to reduce those RMDs.
Yep. I'm glad you brought that up, because that does bring us to our last question. For retirees who want to make their savings last, what strategies can help them decide how much to withdraw from their 401k each year, how to mitigate those taxes? Because this really is a delicate balance. When you have a tax deferred account, you let it grow, you have a larger nest egg, but also a bigger tax burden.
Yeah. And, it really kind of starts if you're still working. A lot of companies now are offering the Roth option. So,
right.
Nothing is all or nothing, right? You don't have to go, oh, I'm going to put 100% of my money now into a Roth 401k or a Roth 457b. You can put a portion of it, right? Play around with the taxes, because you have to realize if you put money in a Roth 401k that, and let's say in the example I used earlier, you have $100,000 worth of income, you put $10,000 in that Roth 401k, you have a tax bill for that year of $100,000. The big thing here is we're at some of the lowest tax rates in history. So if you're generally speaking in a 24% tax bracket and you put that money in a Roth, you just bought the tax man out at a rate that you understand. And if you ask any of my advisor buddies in the Midwest, you ask them this question of what their farmer clients would want. Would they want to pay tax on the seed or the harvest? Those farmers are always going to say pay tax on the seed.
Right.
The other thing, now you're retired. Now, well, I can't do Roth 401k contributions. Well, that's when you start to look at Roth conversion. And again, this is a similar concept, except you're going to take, let's say you have $1 million 401k that's now an IRA, and you're going to start saying, hey, listen, we're going to develop a long-term plan, and every year we're going to really get this down to the minute details. And I want to convert, $50,000 to $100,000 a year, whatever that number is. And you're going to pay the tax on that conversion that year. So it's very important that, I mean, honestly, you get professional help on this, because there's a lot of things that you can trigger. You can trigger Social Security taxation, you can trigger Medicare taxation, and, or you can just, bump yourself up into higher marginal tax brackets. So it's good to have a 30,000 foot view, but then really hone down with specialized software to say, hey, listen, we can only go this far because we are going to affect your Social Security. We're going to affect your Medicare, or we're just going to shoot you from a 12% tax bracket to a 24% marginal tax bracket. So, you want to consider Roth conversions because, again, Roth IRAs are not subject to RMDs. So not only have you bought the government out at a rate that you determined, I'm not saying you liked paying the taxes on it, but you have some control over that rate.
Right.
That Roth 401k money or Roth IRA money now grows tax-free. It's not subject to RMDs. You've lowered your other RMDs, and all that money, all that growth inside that Roth IRA is your money. Now, one last tax management plan. You don't want to do Roth conversions. You don't want to pay the taxes now. Another strategy that involves Social Security claiming is you could delay your Social Security and bridge, and let's say, hey, I needed that $50,000 of Social Security a year, and now you're telling me to delay. Well, guess what? You're going to spend from your IRA. You're going to build a bridge. You're going to reduce your account balances while you're maximizing your Social Security. Again, that's an idea. You always want to take the data and use the software to give you the best analysis. But the big thing is do not let your 401k turn into a ticking tax time bomb. And think back to this, because Aaron, I'll be 50 this year. The last thing I knew, I was 21, and now you're 50. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that. Like, wow, I can't believe my whole career is over, and now I'm in this different chapter of your life. Well, do you think life is going to slow down? It seems that the older you get, the quicker it goes. So before you know it, RMDs are going to be here. And, for a lot of people, this becomes a big tax problem. And also, as I said earlier, a big, market issue, because you may, be taking money out in a down market. You may be forced to take that money out.
Yeah, so many moving parts with this question. I think that what's most important, what I've learned from you, John, is having this conversation with a professional early is really important, so we can start putting a plan in place. Because while it may feel out of our control, there's a lot of strategies that are within our grasp. So if somebody would like to sit down with you, talk through some of these strategies to lower their taxes in retirement, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, well, as we mentioned, we had several different topics that we covered in this video. If you go to our website, www.gosecurus.com, you can see all the videos. As a matter of fact, they're all on YouTube also. So I really strongly suggest that you like and subscribe. And if you have a comment, put that in here. We want to hear from you. While you're on the website and you're watching all those other videos and you have questions or you want to come in and see us, visit the Contact Us tab, where you can schedule a 20-minute phone call, and I will answer any general planning questions or answer questions about myself or the firm. Or if you want to elicit our services, you can go ahead and sign up for a complimentary vision and clarity consultation.
Great. John, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Erin.